In 2023, Voyager 1 started sending data that made no sense. Engineers at NASA spent months trying to figure out what was wrong with the spacecraft. Nothing was wrong. The instruments were working perfectly. What Voyager had found was something on the other side of the solar system that no model had ever predicted. A wall, 50,000 degrees hot, made of plasma, and it was never supposed to be there. This is what happens when you send a machine to the edge of everything. A machine built with less memory than a digital watch, running on the power of a refrigerator light bulb, is still whispering across the void. Voyager 1 is now 24.8 billion kilometers from Earth, a number so large it barely fits in the mind. If you left today and drove at highway speed, you would reach it in the year 19,026. Yet every day, a handful of watts, about what it takes to power a nightlight, keep its heart beating. 4 science instruments, all that is left from the original dozen, draw roughly 4 watts combined. The rest of the energy is rationed across heaters, transmitters, and a computer system with just 69 kilobytes of memory. That is less than a single email attachment. To talk to Voyager now is to send a signal that takes 22 hours and 35 minutes to arrive. Wait another 22 hours and 35 minutes for a reply. Every conversation is stretched across nearly 2 days. The Deep Space Network's giant radio dishes strain to catch Voyager's signal, which arrives 20 billion times weaker than a cell phone signal. It is like picking out a single whisper in a stadium packed with shouting fans. No one planned for this. No one imagined a spacecraft would still be alive, or that its ancient circuits would be troubleshooting mysteries at the edge of the sun's domain. When something goes wrong, engineers must wait nearly 2 days just to see if a command worked. The distance is not just a number. It is a wall of silence, a test of patience, and a reminder that Voyager is now beyond the reach of quick fixes. Yet somehow, this fragile half-powered outpost is still listening, still sending back the impossible. In the spring of 2023, the stream of data from Voyager 1 twisted into nonsense. Telemetry packets that should have described the spacecraft's health instead arrived as garbled, unreadable strings, headers scrambled and numbers impossible. To engineers at JPL, it looked like the spacecraft's mind had slipped. The team braced for the worst, a failing memory chip, a radiation strike, or the first signs of the end. Commands were sent, each one a question hurled into a silence that lasted nearly 2 days before an answer could return. The Deep Space Network confirmed the carrier signal was steady, but every packet from the flight data subsystem failed its error checks. The instruments themselves, the cosmic ray detector and the plasma wave receiver, remained powered, but their voices were lost in the static. For months, the investigation stretched on. Engineers combed through decades-old code, replayed raw telemetry, and even simulated the failure on Earth-bound hardware built in the 1970s. They tested for cosmic ray bit flips, checked the health of the antenna, and ruled out ground equipment errors. The breakthrough came when a full memory dump showed the spacecraft had started running an obsolete routine, code that had not been touched since the 1990s. A software patch was crafted, uploaded, and then the team waited. 45 hours later, a clean block of data arrived. The spacecraft was not broken. The anomaly had been real. A dormant section of memory, jolted awake by a cosmic event, had hijacked the telemetry stream. The fix held. Voyager was still listening, and the universe was still sending signals no human had ever heard before. The edge of the sun's domain does not behave as any scientist expected. When Voyager 1 arrived at the heliopause in 2012, the spacecraft's instruments, its only senses, registered a world in upheaval. The solar wind, which had carried the sun's particles outward for billions of kilometers, collapsed almost instantly. The particle counters dropped from a steady stream to near silence, as if someone had slammed a vault door. But the magnetic field did not flip in a single clean moment. Instead, Voyager's magnetometer recorded a series of slow, uneasy rotations, as if the field itself was twisting and searching for a new direction. 5 times over 2 months, the field seemed to tip, settle, then surge again, never quite matching the textbook promise of a sharp border. Cosmic rays, once held at bay by the sun's influence, surged in. Their intensity stepped upward in distinct layers, not in a single jump. Each new rise brought a fresh wave of high-energy particles, battering the spacecraft's shielding and rattling its detectors. The plasma wave receiver, designed decades before anyone imagined this crossing, began to pick up electric field oscillations that should not exist, signals that no model had predicted. For Voyager, the boundary was not a wall, but a storm front, a region of turbulence and chaos. The sun's breath thinned, then vanished, replaced by a denser alien plasma that pressed in from the galaxy beyond. Inside Voyager, relays clicked and memory registers flickered as the instruments tried to keep up. The spacecraft was not built for this landscape, yet every reading, every sudden drop or surge, was a message from a place no human had ever reached. The crossing was not a moment, but a drawn-out struggle, a layered, shifting frontier where the rules of the solar system gave way to something stranger. What waited beyond would force scientists to rewrite their understanding of the boundary itself. A wall of plasma, hotter than anything predicted, stands at the edge of the sun's influence. Voyager 1's instruments, built in the 1970s, detected a temperature spike near 50,000 Kelvin, 10 times hotter than the best models allowed. This is not a gentle transition. It is a shock, a razor-thin region where the laws of the outer solar system seem to break. The probe's plasma wave receiver, never designed for this, picked up signals that should not exist. The readings forced the world's leading heliophysicists to admit that their decades of simulation had missed something fundamental. The culprit, at least in part, appears to be pickup ions. These are neutral atoms from interstellar space, swept up by the solar wind, then zapped into charged particles by sunlight. As Voyager 1 crossed the heliopause, these pickup ions were suddenly accelerated, slamming into the plasma and dumping vast amounts of energy. But even the most generous calculations cannot fully account for the 50,000 Kelvin spike. The heating rate is still too high, the boundary too thin, and the models are left scrambling. Dr. Merav Ofer, one of the field's most prominent theorists, said at a NASA briefing that the Voyager data are forcing us to re-examine the fundamental assumptions that underlie our heliospheric models. For a community that once saw the heliopause as a static wall, this is a jolt. The edge of the sun's domain is not a line, but a battlefield, dynamic, violent, and still not understood. The question now hangs in the data. What else is waiting out there, just beyond the reach of prediction? Voyager's voice barely rises above the static. By the time its signal tumbles through 24 billion kilometers of emptiness, it arrives at Earth at a strength so faint it is 20 billion times weaker than the hum of a cell phone. The Deep Space Network's 70-meter dishes, massive structures rooted on 3 continents, are tuned to catch this single thread of radio energy. Engineers describe their task as listening for a whisper in a stadium full of shouting fans. Every bit of data is buried in cosmic noise, electromagnetic storms, and the hiss of our own planet. To pull out Voyager's message, the Deep Space Network must integrate the signal for hours, stacking each faint pulse until a pattern emerges from the chaos. The spacecraft's transmitter, powered by the slow decay of radioactive pellets, pushes out just enough wattage to be heard at all. The odds are stacked against every transmission. Yet, day after day, the signal is found, decoded, checked, and translated into numbers that carry the story of a place no human has ever seen. This is not just a technical feat, it is a daily act of faith, a conversation held on the brink of silence, where every successful contact is a reminder that something built by human hands is still out there, listening. Every decision on Voyager now is a choice between science and survival. Power drops a little more each year, and the team at JPL must decide which part of the spacecraft's mind to dim next. In February 2026, the low-energy charged particle detector was switched off. The plasma science instrument had already been silenced. Each shutdown is a small farewell. A sensor that once counted the sun's particles or mapped the edge of the solar wind goes quiet forever. What remains is a skeleton crew of instruments, drawing less power than a single LED bulb. The spacecraft's memory, just 69 kilobytes, holds the last routines needed to keep the transmitter alive. Yet Voyager carries something no other probe does, a golden disk bolted to its side, built to last 1 billion years. The golden record holds 118 items, greetings in 55 languages, music from Bach to Chuck Berry, the sound of a heartbeat, a baby's cry, a kiss. There are diagrams of DNA, snapshots of life on Earth, and a map to our sun. The instructions are etched in a universal code, meant for any being with eyes to see or hands to touch. As the instruments wink out one by one, the record's meaning grows heavier. Long after the last watt fades, Voyager will drift on, carrying this fragile cargo, the memory of a world that once built machines to listen to the stars. Right now, a spacecraft with less memory than a wristwatch is sending home whispers from a place no theory prepared us for. Each faint signal takes nearly 2 days for Earth to answer. Humanity's longest conversation continues, until the silence, when wonder must outlast the voice that carried it.